Effective communication is the foundation of every success story, yet most people never unlock its true power. This audiobook will take you beyond ordinary conversations, teaching you how to express yourself clearly, persuade with confidence, and build lasting connections. What you're about to learn will change the way you communicate forever, giving you the tools to influence minds and inspire action. Step into the art of communication and watch your world transform.
Chapter 1. Nothing can survive without food. Thich Nhat Hanh begins this chapter with a simple yet powerful truth. Just as our body cannot survive without physical food, our mind and heart cannot survive without the food they consume every day. But here, food doesn't only mean what we eat and drink. It also includes what we see, hear, read, think, and feel. Every word we listen to, every image we watch, every conversation we take part in, all of it is nourishment that shapes our mental and emotional world. He introduces the idea of 4 types of nutriments: edible food, the literal food and drink we consume to keep our body alive; sense impressions, the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches we experience, as well as what we read, watch, and hear; volition, our deepest intentions, goals, and desires, which motivate our daily actions; and consciousness, the mental environment we live in, including our own thoughts and the collective energy of the people around us. Thich Nhat Hanh stresses that we often focus only on the first type, edible food, while ignoring the other 3. But in reality, these invisible forms of nourishment are just as important, because they feed our mind and emotions. If we constantly consume violent movies, gossip, or angry conversations, we are feeding the seeds of fear, frustration, and aggression inside us. On the other hand, if we surround ourselves with kindness, mindfulness, and understanding, we are feeding the seeds of peace and joy. He uses a simple image. Think of your mind as a garden. Whatever you water will grow. If you water weeds like anger, jealousy, or resentment, they will become stronger. If you water flowers like compassion, patience, and gratitude, they will flourish. The choice of what to water depends on what we allow into our mind each day. To make this concept relatable, he shares examples from everyday life. Imagine someone starting their morning by scrolling through social media filled with negativity, arguments, and criticism. Even before breakfast, their mood becomes tense, and they carry that irritation into their interactions, snapping at family, feeling impatient at work. Now compare this to a morning where they begin the day with a short walk, listening to calming music, or reading an inspiring quote. The mental food is different, and so is the energy they carry throughout the day. Another example is in relationships. If partners feed their connection with small acts of kindness, a smile, a supportive word, a hug, their bond strengthens over time. But if the daily diet of the relationship is filled with blame, criticism, and silence, the emotional connection weakens. Thich Nhat Hanh encourages practicing mindful consumption in all areas. With media, choose TV shows, movies, and books that uplift rather than disturb your peace of mind. With conversations, spend time with people who inspire positivity instead of constant complaints or gossip. With thoughts, notice when you are feeding your mind with fear or resentment and gently shift to more constructive thinking. He also highlights the importance of being aware of volition, the kind of life goals we are feeding. If our motivation is rooted in greed, competition, or revenge, our energy will be restless and destructive. But if our motivation is to help, create, and grow, our actions will be more peaceful and fulfilling. In daily practice, this could mean asking yourself, is what I am about to read or watch going to nourish my peace of mind? Are the people I spend time with feeding my joy or my frustration? Is my current goal driven by love or by fear? He also explains that our collective consciousness, the shared emotional environment of our family, workplace, or society, deeply affects us. If we live in an atmosphere of constant criticism or anger, it becomes easy to absorb that energy without realizing it. Being mindful of the communities we are part of helps us choose healthier environments when possible. A practical step is to take mental food breaks. Just as we might go on a healthy diet for our body, we can take a break from violent media, heated debates, or negative company for a few days and notice how our mind feels lighter and calmer. The chapter closes with a reminder. Nothing can survive without food, and that includes our happiness, peace, and love. Every day, with every choice, we are feeding something inside us. The question is, are we feeding our suffering, or are we feeding our joy? By choosing nourishing mental and emotional food, we give ourselves and those around us the best chance to live in understanding, peace, and harmony.
Chapter 2. A New Way of Seeing. In this chapter, Thich Nhat Hanh invites us to look at life and the people in it through fresh, compassionate eyes. He explains that much of our suffering in communication comes not from the actual events, but from the way we perceive them. Our mind constantly interprets situations through the filter of our past experiences, emotions, and assumptions. If we can learn to see more clearly, without these heavy filters, our interactions become more understanding and less reactive. He introduces the idea of perceptions as seeds. Just like seeds in a garden, perceptions grow depending on how we water them. If we keep watering negative interpretations, they don't respect me, or she's always ignoring me, these seeds grow into resentment and distrust. But if we water seeds of openness, like maybe they're going through a hard time, or I might not know the full story, we create space for compassion and healing. Thich Nhat Hanh points out that misperceptions are one of the biggest causes of conflict. For example, a friend might walk past you without saying hello. Your first thought might be, they're upset with me. But in reality, they might simply be distracted, tired, or deep in thought. Without checking the truth, we let our assumption harden into a story, and that story can damage relationships. To change this pattern, he suggests practicing beginner's mind, approaching each moment as if you are seeing it for the first time, without rushing to judgment. This doesn't mean ignoring past experiences, but it means not letting them completely dictate how you interpret the present. A relatable example. Imagine a workplace meeting where a colleague interrupts you. Instead of immediately assuming they're being rude, you might think, maybe they're excited to share something, or perhaps they misunderstood my point. This small shift in perception can prevent irritation from growing and help the conversation flow more smoothly. Thich Nhat Hanh also connects this to mindfulness. When we are present and calm, our vision is clearer. Stress,
anger, and anxiety cloud our perception, making us more likely to misunderstand. By taking a breath before reacting, we give ourselves the chance to see the situation more accurately. He encourages the habit of checking in before making conclusions. This can be as simple as saying, "I might be wrong, but I thought you seemed upset earlier. Is that true?" This kind of gentle inquiry often reveals that our assumptions were mistaken and prevents unnecessary conflict. In daily life, this new way of seeing could mean giving loved ones the benefit of the doubt instead of jumping to criticism, pausing before reacting to an email that feels rude, and perhaps rereading it later with a calmer mind, actively looking for positive intentions behind someone's actions, even if the result wasn't perfect. Thich Nhat Hanh also talks about interbeing, the idea that everything and everyone is interconnected. When we truly see this, it becomes harder to judge others harshly because we recognize that we share the same human struggles. The anger or carelessness we see in someone else may also exist in us, and the kindness we appreciate in ourselves also exists in them. He uses the metaphor of a cloudy glass of water. If you shake it up, the dirt makes it look muddy. But if you let it sit still, the dirt settles and the water becomes clear. Our mind works the same way. When it is still and mindful, our perception becomes clearer and we can see people and situations more accurately. The chapter ends with a reminder that seeing in a new way is a choice we can make every day. Each time we question our assumptions, look for a fuller picture, and remain open to being wrong, we take a step toward more compassionate and truthful communication. By shifting our perception, we not only change how we relate to others, we also transform the quality of our own inner peace.
Chapter 3. Truthful, Loving Speech. In this chapter, Thich Nhat Hanh focuses on the art of speaking truth in a way that heals rather than harms. He begins with a reminder that words have incredible power. They can build trust, inspire hope, and bring people closer. Or they can create deep wounds that last for years. Because of this, mindful speech is one of the most important practices for creating harmony in relationships. He defines truthful speech as speaking honestly without exaggeration, distortion, or intentional omission. Truth is not just about avoiding lies. It's also about sharing information in a way that benefits the listener and strengthens mutual understanding. But Thich Nhat Hanh warns that truth alone is not enough. If delivered harshly, it can cause pain. This is why truth must be paired with loving speech, words spoken with kindness, respect, and compassion. A simple way he suggests practicing this is by asking yourself 3 questions before speaking. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If the answer to all 3 is yes, your words are more likely to bring connection rather than division. He shares that truthful, loving speech requires timing. Even the most well-intentioned words may not be received well if the listener is upset, distracted, or exhausted. Waiting for the right moment can make all the difference. For example, instead of criticizing your partner's oversight the moment they walk in tired from work, you might wait until they are more relaxed, ensuring the conversation is constructive. He offers practical guidance for challenging conversations. One technique is to begin with appreciation. I really value the effort you've been putting in lately, before addressing the concern, and I wanted to share something that's been on my mind. This softens the message and shows that your goal is understanding, not attack. He also highlights the importance of avoiding harmful speech, gossip,
slander, and criticism spoken behind someone's back. These forms of communication may feel harmless in the moment, but they erode trust and create a negative atmosphere. Instead, he suggests speaking directly to the person involved, using gentle honesty. A relatable day-to-day example: imagine a friend repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute. Instead of saying to others, "They're so unreliable," you could address them directly with, "I feel disappointed when plans change suddenly. Can we find a way to make it work better for both of us?" This is truthful, but still kind and focused on solutions. He also suggests practicing loving speech daily, even in small, casual interactions. Thanking a store clerk sincerely, greeting colleagues warmly, or complimenting someone's effort. These small seeds of kindness accumulate over time, making difficult conversations easier because a foundation of goodwill already exists. Thich Nhat Hanh connects loving speech to deep listening, which he expands on in the next chapter. When people feel truly heard, they are more receptive to hearing the truth from us. This is why speaking and listening are like two wings of the same bird. Both are needed for healthy communication. The chapter closes with a reminder that practicing truthful, loving speech is not about being nice all the time or avoiding uncomfortable truths. It's about choosing words that are honest and compassionate, aiming to reduce suffering and increase understanding. Every time we speak in this way, we strengthen trust, create harmony, and contribute to a more peaceful world, starting with our own relationships.
Chapter 4. The Keys to Communication. In this chapter, Thich Nhat Hanh reveals what he calls the two essential keys for genuine healing communication: deep listening and loving speech. While earlier chapters touched on these ideas, here he goes deeper into how they work together to resolve conflict, build trust, and create connection. He begins with deep listening, listening not just to reply, but to truly understand the other person's feelings and needs. This means giving your full attention, suspending judgment, and avoiding the urge to prepare your own response while the other person is speaking. Thich Nhat Hanh calls it listening with the sole purpose of helping the other suffer less. He shares that when someone is angry or hurt, they often say things in a way that is difficult to hear. But if we can listen beyond the words to the emotions underneath, fear, disappointment, loneliness, we can respond in a way that heals rather than escalate the situation. A simple real-life example: if a coworker says, "You never help me with projects," it's easy to get defensive. But deep listening might reveal that what they're really expressing is, "I feel overwhelmed and wish I had more support." By focusing on the feeling instead of the accusation, you can respond with empathy rather than argument. The second key, loving speech, is the natural partner of deep listening. Once we've understood the other person's perspective, we can choose words that convey care, respect, and honesty. Loving speech does not mean avoiding the truth. It means delivering the truth in a way that the other person can hear without feeling attacked. He suggests starting with phrases that open the heart rather than close it. Instead of, "You're wrong about this," try, "I see it differently. Can I share my perspective?" These small shifts can change the entire direction of a conversation. He also emphasizes mindful pauses in both speaking and listening. Silence can be just as important as words. When emotions run high, a short pause allows both sides to breathe, think, and return to the discussion with a calmer mind. Daily practices for these keys include putting away distractions like phones when someone is speaking to you, restating what you heard to confirm understanding before responding, using I statements to express your feelings rather than blaming, offering appreciation regularly to strengthen relationships. Thich Nhat Hanh also warns about selective listening, hearing only the parts of a conversation that confirm our own beliefs. True deep listening means staying open to being changed by what we hear, not just waiting for our turn to speak. He uses a metaphor of a doctor and a patient. The doctor's first job is to listen carefully to the patient's symptoms before prescribing medicine. In communication, listening is diagnosing the illness of misunderstanding, and loving speech is the medicine that can heal it. Another example he shares comes from his own peace work. During dialogues between opposing groups, he often began by inviting each side to listen silently for several minutes without interruption. Many times, the simple act of being heard softened the tension enough to allow solutions to emerge naturally. The chapter ends with the reminder that these two keys, deep listening and loving speech, are skills we can develop with practice. At first, we may fail, lose patience, or slip into old habits. But every time we return to mindful listening and speaking, we open the door to deeper understanding and stronger relationships. These keys don't just improve conversations, they have the power to transform entire communities, one mindful exchange at a time.
Chapter 5. Training in Communication. In this chapter, Thich Nhat Hanh explains that good communication is a skill that can be learned and strengthened through deliberate practice, just like learning to play an instrument, cook, or play a sport. Many people think communication is something we naturally do well, but in reality, most of us carry unhelpful habits, like interrupting, making assumptions, or reacting too quickly. To change this, we need to train both our mind and our heart. He begins with mindfulness as the foundation. Mindfulness allows us to be present in the moment instead of being pulled by strong emotions or mental chatter. When we are mindful, there's a small but important pause between what we feel and how we respond. That pause is where skillful communication happens. Without it, we often speak impulsively and regret it later. One simple training exercise he suggests is mindful breathing. If you feel irritation rising during a conversation, pause and take a slow breath in, then exhale gently. This brief moment can prevent hurtful words from leaving your mouth. Even in the middle of a heated discussion, this tiny gap can shift the tone toward calmness. Another part of communication training is observing your habits without self-criticism. Perhaps you often speak over people, withdraw when tension rises, or focus too much on defending your position instead of understanding theirs. By simply noticing these tendencies, you take the first step toward changing them. Thich Nhat Hanh also encourages writing before speaking when emotions run high. For example, if you're upset with a friend, writing a letter you may or may not send can help clarify your feelings. In writing, you can filter out accusations, focus on facts, and express your needs more clearly. In everyday life, training might look like listening fully to a family member before offering your opinion, waiting 3 breaths before replying to criticism, asking clarifying questions instead of assuming someone's meaning. He connects communication training to physical practice, just as a musician practices scales or an athlete trains daily. We can practice mindful speech and deep listening in small, everyday moments, greeting the bus driver warmly, thanking a colleague for their work, or calmly discussing a household chore. These low-pressure situations strengthen our skills so we are ready for high-stakes conversations. Thich Nhat Hanh shares the example of beginning anew from his own community. In this structured practice, people share appreciation first, then gently express concerns, and finally make concrete suggestions for improvement. This method ensures even difficult conversations are rooted in respect and understanding. He also points out that training requires watering the right seeds. Every time you choose patience over snapping or listening over interrupting, you strengthen the seeds of peace and connection within you. Over time, those seeds grow naturally, and kind communication becomes your default. A relatable example. Imagine two coworkers in disagreement. Without training, they might argue, defend themselves, and leave frustrated. With mindful training, one pauses to breathe, listens to the other's concerns, and responds with respect, turning a potential fight into a cooperative problem-solving session. The chapter closes with the reminder that communication training is lifelong. We will all make mistakes, but every mindful breath, every compassionate pause, and every honest and kind word is progress. Communication is not about perfection. It's about consistent practice. The more we train, the more our words and presence can reduce suffering and build understanding, both in our closest relationships and in the world around us.
Chapter 6. Practicing Peace in Times of War. In this chapter, Thich Nhat Hanh explains that peace is not something we wait for after conflict ends. It is something we actively practice, even while tensions are high. War here does not only mean armed battles between nations. It also includes the personal battles we face every day, family arguments, workplace conflicts, and inner struggles with anger or fear. If we cannot practice peace in small situations, it will be impossible to create it in larger ones. He begins with the idea that peace starts inside. If our mind is filled with frustration, resentment, or blame, our words and actions will reflect that inner war. Before speaking to someone we're upset with, we need to calm ourselves through mindfulness, even if it's just by taking a few slow breaths or walking away for a short time. This is not avoidance. It's preparing ourselves so that we can communicate without causing more harm. One of the key practices he shares is peaceful presence. This means showing up in a way that makes the other person feel safe, even if you disagree with them. Your tone of voice, facial expression, and body language should convey respect and openness. For example, if a colleague criticizes your idea, instead of reacting defensively, you could say, "I'd like to understand your point better. Can you explain?" This approach changes the energy from confrontation to dialogue. Thich Nhat Hanh also warns against the blame habit. Blaming shifts the focus from solving the problem to defending ourselves. Instead of, "You never listen to me," he suggests using I statements like, "I feel unheard when my ideas aren't acknowledged." This keeps the conversation about the issue, not the person's character. Another powerful tool is deep listening as peacemaking. Sometimes people in conflict are not ready to hear advice or solutions. They simply need to feel heard. By listening without interruption, judgment, or the urge to respond immediately, we give them the space to release tension and pain. In many cases, this act alone softens the conflict enough to find common ground. He provides examples from everyday life. A couple arguing about household chores takes a mindful break, then returns to the discussion calmly, focusing on solutions instead of past mistakes. A workplace dispute is eased when one person says, "Tell me your side first. I'll listen fully before I respond." In a heated online debate, someone chooses not to post an angry reply, but instead sends a private message seeking understanding. Thich Nhat Hanh also highlights the power of small daily acts of peace. Smiling at a stranger, offering help to a neighbor, or speaking kindly to a stressed cashier might seem unrelated to conflict,
But these habits train the mind to respond with compassion instead of aggression. This peace muscle becomes stronger and more natural over time. Mindful pauses are another technique. A few seconds of silence in the middle of a tense conversation can allow emotions to settle and prevent escalation. Even in large-scale conflicts, he has seen dialogue sessions improve dramatically when moments of silence are intentionally included. He reminds us that peace is not about avoiding conflict entirely. Disagreements are a natural part of life. Instead, peace is the ability to face those disagreements with clarity, compassion, and the willingness to understand the other person's suffering. The chapter closes with a profound truth. Lasting peace is built one interaction at a time. Every time we choose mindful words over harsh ones, or deep listening over quick judgment, we plant seeds of reconciliation. And when many people plant these seeds in their families, workplaces, and communities, those small gardens of peace can eventually grow into a world where understanding is stronger than division.
Chapter 7. Communicating with Yourself. In this chapter, Thich Nhat Hanh explains that the most important conversation we will ever have is the one we have with ourselves. If our inner voice is harsh, judgmental, or full of self-blame, it will be nearly impossible to speak with kindness and understanding to others. The tone we use internally becomes the tone we bring into all our relationships. He begins by noting that many people live disconnected from their own inner world. We often ignore or suppress our emotions, especially the difficult ones, until they overflow in unhealthy ways. This inner neglect not only harms our well-being, but also makes it harder to communicate clearly with others. Thich Nhat Hanh introduces the idea of mindful self-communication, treating ourselves like a dear friend. This means taking time to pause and ask, "How am I feeling right now? What do I need?" When we can acknowledge our emotions without judgment, we begin to create an inner space of safety and compassion. One practice he recommends is writing a compassionate letter to yourself. For example, if you make a mistake at work and feel like a failure, instead of repeating, "I'm useless," in your mind, you might write, "Dear me, I know you're feeling disappointed, but mistakes are part of learning. I'm here for you." This shift from self-criticism to self-support changes how you handle challenges. He also talks about recognizing and naming emotions. Simply saying to yourself, "I'm feeling anxious," or "I notice I'm frustrated," creates a bit of distance from the feeling. This distance helps prevent emotions from controlling our words and actions. Daily life examples of self-communication include noticing irritation before a meeting and taking deep breaths to calm yourself so you don't bring that irritation into the discussion. Talking to yourself kindly after a disagreement instead of replaying every mistake in your head. Choosing to rest or go for a walk when overwhelmed instead of pushing yourself to exhaustion. Thich Nhat Hanh emphasizes that self-compassion is not selfish. When we take care of our own mental and emotional needs, we have more patience, generosity, and understanding for others. Just like you can't pour water from an empty cup, you can't offer empathy to others if you are emotionally drained. He suggests mindful breathing mantras for self-care. Breathing in, I see my pain. Breathing out, I hold my pain with kindness. These mantras help us stay present with our feelings without getting lost in them. He also warns about the danger of believing the harsh stories we tell ourselves. I'm not good enough. Nobody cares about me. I always fail. These mental narratives are like junk food for the mind. They weaken us and make our interactions with others more reactive. Mindful self-talk replaces them with nourishing, realistic, and encouraging thoughts. The chapter ends with a reminder that communication is a two-way street, but it begins inside. If your inner voice is gentle, honest, and caring, your outer communication will naturally reflect those qualities. By becoming your own best listener and most compassionate supporter, you create a strong foundation for every conversation you will ever have.
Chapter 8. Mindful Communication at Work. In this chapter, Thich Nhat Hanh focuses on how mindfulness and compassion can transform professional relationships. Workplaces are often fast-paced, competitive, and high-pressure environments, which can easily lead to misunderstandings, impatience, or even hostility if communication is not handled with care. By applying mindfulness at work, we can create a culture of respect, cooperation, and mutual understanding. He begins with the principle of presence. When you are speaking to a colleague, giving them your full attention communicates that you value and respect them. This means setting aside distractions, no checking emails or glancing at your phone mid-conversation. Even a short, focused exchange can make the other person feel heard. Thich Nhat Hanh emphasizes that much workplace tension comes from unclear communication. Vague instructions, unspoken expectations, or assumptions can lead to unnecessary stress. For example, telling a team member, "Please finish this soon," can cause confusion. Do you mean today, this week, or next month? Clear and specific language prevents misunderstandings before they happen. A key workplace skill is deep listening without judgment. If a colleague voices a concern, avoid rushing to defend yourself or dismiss their point. Instead, listen for the underlying emotion. Maybe they're stressed, feeling undervalued, or worried about deadlines. When people feel heard, they are more open to collaboration and compromise. Practical examples include, when two employees have a conflict, allow each to fully explain their side without interruption before suggesting solutions. When offering feedback, start by acknowledging what was done well, then discuss areas of improvement, and finish with encouragement. If you don't understand a request, ask for clarification instead of making assumptions that could lead to mistakes. Thich Nhat Hanh also addresses stress management in the workplace. Short mindfulness breaks, even 30 seconds of deep breathing before a meeting, can reset your mind and prevent tension from spilling into your communication. Another major point is avoiding gossip and toxic talk. Even light-hearted gossip erodes trust and creates divisions. Replacing negative talk with supportive, uplifting speech builds a more positive work atmosphere. For example, instead of saying, "He's always late," you might say, "Maybe he's going through a challenging time. Let's check in." He also discusses mindful email and message writing. Written communication lacks tone and body language, so it's easy for messages to be misread. Reading an email twice before sending, once for clarity, once for kindness, can prevent unnecessary conflicts. In day-to-day work life, mindful communication might look like greeting your team warmly each morning, giving full attention in meetings instead of preparing your next point while others speak, expressing gratitude for even small contributions, following up instructions in writing so everyone has a clear reference. Thich Nhat Hanh concludes by reminding us that work is not separate from our personal or spiritual growth. Every conversation at work is an opportunity to practice patience, understanding, and compassion. When we bring mindfulness into professional communication, we not only improve productivity and teamwork, but also create an environment where people feel respected, valued, and motivated, turning the workplace into a place of harmony, not stress.
Chapter 9. Ecology of Communication. In this chapter, Thich Nhat Hanh introduces the idea that communication functions like an ecosystem. Everything we say, hear, and think is interconnected, just as every element in nature affects the whole environment. Just like pollution in nature harms all living things, negative or careless communication pollutes the shared emotional and mental space we live in. Conversely, mindful and compassionate communication can nourish and sustain healthy relationships, much like clean air and water sustain life. He begins by explaining that every word and action has ripple effects. A kind remark to a colleague might uplift their mood, leading them to treat others more kindly throughout the day. On the other hand, a sarcastic or impatient comment can cause hurt that spreads tension far beyond the original conversation. This is why he urges us to think of communication as a shared environment we are all responsible for protecting. Thich Nhat Hanh highlights the role of collective consciousness, the emotional and mental climate of a group, whether it's a family, workplace, or community. If the group atmosphere is dominated by criticism, gossip, or hostility, individuals are more likely to adopt the same tone without even realizing it. But if the group values encouragement, honesty, and active listening, those habits become contagious as well. Practical examples of this concept include a household where family members regularly express gratitude tends to have warmer, more supportive relationships. A workplace where leaders model respectful dialogue sees fewer conflicts among employees. A community group that begins meetings with a short moment of silence sets a tone of calmness and respect. He also warns that communication pollution doesn't only come from our own words, it also comes from the media and conversations we consume. Spending hours absorbing angry debates, violent entertainment, or constant bad news can unconsciously shape the way we speak and think. Just as we choose healthy food for our bodies, we must choose healthy mental food for our shared communication environment. To create a healthy communication ecosystem, Thich Nhat Hanh suggests being mindful of your input, limit exposure to harmful or overly negative content. Speak with intention. Ask yourself if your words are helping to clean the environment or polluting it. Encourage positive exchanges. Acknowledge others' contributions and express appreciation openly. Practice group mindfulness. Small rituals like shared breathing or gratitude rounds can shift the whole atmosphere. He offers a relatable image. If a single person litters in a park, it becomes easier for others to litter too, and soon the park loses its beauty. In the same way, one unkind remark can make unkindness feel normal in a group. But one kind act can inspire others to act kindly, gradually transforming the ecology of that space. Thich Nhat Hanh closes the chapter by reminding us that we are all both contributors and beneficiaries of the communication environment we live in. By speaking with care, listening deeply, and consuming wholesome mental food, we can create a shared atmosphere where trust, respect, and compassion naturally flourish, just like a thriving, balanced natural ecosystem.
Chapter 10. Community of Communication. In this final chapter,
Thich Nhat Hanh explains that healthy communication is not only an individual practice, but also a collective responsibility. We live in a web of relationships: families, workplaces, neighborhoods, online communities, and the quality of these connections depends on how we communicate together. When a group commits to mindful speech and deep listening, it becomes a community of communication, a safe and nourishing space for everyone. He begins by describing how mindfulness works. In a mindful community, members help each other return to the present moment. For example, if someone becomes agitated during a discussion, others might pause and invite a few breaths before continuing. This shared practice creates a sense of stability and trust, even when disagreements arise. A community of communication values understanding over winning. Instead of trying to win arguments, members aim to understand each other's needs and perspectives. Thich Nhat Hanh shares that this approach turns conflicts into opportunities for growth rather than threats to unity. Practical examples include a family that sets aside a weekly listening time where each person speaks without interruption, a workplace team that begins meetings with a few moments of silence to center themselves, a group of friends that practices giving feedback gently and directly, avoiding gossip or passive aggressiveness. He also discusses the importance of shared agreements, simple guidelines the group commits to, such as speaking truthfully, avoiding harmful speech, and listening fully before responding. These agreements act as a safety net, ensuring everyone knows the standards for respectful interaction. He emphasizes the role of compassion in leadership. Leaders set the tone for communication in any group. A leader who listens patiently, acknowledges mistakes, and speaks with kindness inspires others to do the same. Conversely, a leader who interrupts, blames, or uses harsh language encourages those habits in others. He notes that building a community of communication is a gradual process. At first, old habits like gossip or reactive speech may still appear, but with patience and gentle reminders, the group can shift toward more mindful patterns. Celebrating small successes, like resolving a disagreement calmly, helps strengthen the commitment. One key practice he recommends is beginning anew as a group. In this ritual, members first express appreciation for one another, then share any hurt or concerns in a gentle way, and finally suggest positive steps for moving forward. This process keeps relationships fresh and prevents resentments from building up. Thich Nhat Hanh also points out that a community of communication can have a powerful ripple effect beyond itself. A family that practices mindful speech influences children to carry those skills into their own friendships. A workplace with a respectful culture can inspire clients or partners to adopt similar values. In this way, small communities can inspire broader societal change. The chapter closes with a reminder that communication is never a solo act. Every conversation is part of a larger shared space, and every word we contribute shapes that space for better or worse. By committing to mindfulness together, listening deeply, speaking kindly, and supporting each other's growth, we can create communities where understanding, trust, and compassion are the norm, not the exception. Such communities not only make life more harmonious for their members, but also serve as living examples of the peaceful world we hope to build.
Thank you for listening to The Art of Communication.
If you found value in this audiobook, please like, share, and subscribe so you never miss out on more powerful insights that can change your life. Remember, mastering communication is a journey. Keep practicing, keep growing, and watch how your world transforms. Until next time, communicate with purpose and confidence.